Byron and Babbage. Byron and Babbage. Byron and Babbage were two English gentlemen born at the dawn of the industrial age. Babbage, Charles Babbage, the mathematician who envisioned the first digital programmable machine. Today he is known as the father of the computer. Byron, Lord Byron, the rebel romantic poet who is today known as the first modern celebrity. The miracle of his words was only eclipsed by his outrageous personal life, filled with scandalous affairs, daring escapes, and mountains of debt. Byron and Babbage. Byron and Babbage were two English gentlemen born within 3 years of each other, and yet as far as we know, they never met, which is just as well, because they would have hated each other. Babbage believed in science and reason ahead of art and nature. When he wasn't inventing the computer, he was writing tracts like this one that explained how to wring the most profit out of human labor. Babbage believed that the Industrial Revolution was the highlight of human achievement. Byron hated the Industrial Revolution. When artisan weavers broke into textile mills and destroyed the machines that they believed were destroying their lives, Byron stood up in the House of Lords and defended these men, who called themselves the Luddites. If Babbage was a leading industrialist, Byron was a leading romantic, the movement that put the individual artist and the mystery of nature ahead of science and logic and reason. Babbage relied on reason. Byron replied with romance. Babbage created the computer. Byron loved the Luddites. They had not one single belief in common, but they did have one person in common. In the midst of his otherwise shocking debauchery, Byron spent 1 year lawfully married. 1 year. By all accounts, it was an awful lawful marriage. And moments before his poor traumatized wife left him forever, she gave birth to their daughter and named her Ada. Genuinely believing Byron to be insane, she made sure that Ada never met her father. And in fact, she so dreaded that poetic blood in her daughter's veins that she discouraged her from studying literature and art. And instead, she hired the greatest tutors in England to focus Ada's precocious young mind on math. And so it was that when Ada Byron came of age, the elite of England met a debutante with the charm of a Byron and a genius for numbers. And as Ada became the belle of the drawing rooms that season, it wasn't long before she met her intellectual equal, the famous mathematician, Charles Babbage. And in one of those wonderful quirks that history sometimes gives us, the rational, rigid Babbage became BFFs with the rebel, romantic Byron's daughter. And over the course of decades, they established one of the most significant, if underreported, scientific partnerships in history. Byron and Babbage. Or, should I say, because she married not long after they met, Lovelace and Babbage. Meet Ada Lovelace.
Ada Lovelace, who had a brain like Babbage and a heart like Byron, and deployed them both in equal measure. Let me say that again. Ada Lovelace had an intellect to match Babbage and the poetic soul of her father, Lord Byron, and throughout her life she fiercely defended both the logical human brain and the inexplicable human soul. It was an unpopular opinion. You see, in Ada's time, art and science were in conflict. The Babbages were building machines and dismissing the arts. The Byrons were destroying technology and fighting for the soul. Ada saw that both men were wrong. Ada saw that both sides were needed. And in an effort to bring these two things together, she created her own profession. She called herself a poetical scientist, a discipline that brought together the beauty of poetry with the rigour of science, the whimsy of art with the exactness of maths. Illogical and irreverent leaps of intuition with the steady progress of logic. When Babbage designed the specs for his analytical engine, the world's first stored program computer, he described it in the dry academic language of a career mathematician. But when Ada read and entirely absorbed what he had accomplished, this poetical scientist described its much greater importance like this. The analytical engine might weave algebraic patterns just as the mechanical loom weaves flowers and leaves. In a single sentence, she breathed life into a sterile sheath of schematics. A poetical scientist. It was a crazy thing to say in an academic paper. But Ada was onto something. Ada had all sorts of creative, innovative ideas. Unfortunately, she was mostly ignored. And in the 150 years since her death, the ephemeral arts and the practical sciences have often polarised rather than coming together as she might have hoped. And we can still see this in some of our university structures. We have practical business, maths and science degrees. We have creative art, music and design degrees. And in this country, as elsewhere, funding for the arts and humanities has been in steady decline for years. In a recent interview, the Australian writer and academic Tim Dunlop lamented this shift in universities away from academia and towards training. The problem with this, in his opinion, is that as we move further to economies and industries reliant on automation, it's actually a return to the subjects of the humanities that will teach us how to think creatively and envision the future. But where does this leave us today? Business experts call for greater innovation, but we don't always see them equipped to think creatively. In the world of arts and culture, we need solid business skills in order to survive, so creative types need to be prepared for the realities of business. We're a world divided into Babbages and Byrons. But this isn't good for the world. What the world needs is more Adas, more poetical scientists, more crazy ideas grounded in logic. What the world needs is you. Because that's what we are, isn't it? We're a room full of Adas.
A community filled with Adas.
A sector filled with Adas.
I mean, other industries have poetical scientists here and there. But this business, our business, the business of arts and culture, is positively overrun with Adas.
We might just have the highest natural concentration of Adas in the world.
People with the cold logic of a Babbage.
And the warm heart of a Byron.
People who embrace crazy ideas.
And refine them with logic.
We are all Ada. And we are exactly what the world needs right now. So with Ada Lovelace as our guide, today we are going to explore 3 acts of poetical science. 1, how you can unleash your crazy ideas to help advance the business of arts and culture.
2, how together our innovation can help our industry thrive in an era of uncertainty.
And 3, how our industry can serve as a beacon of innovation for the world. Because when you combine your inner Babbage with your inner Byron, there's no telling what we can do. Let me tell you about an Ada in our midst. An Ada named Anna. Young Anna was a freewheeling teen growing up in New Mexico. She achieved genius-level scores when she was tested for math, and everyone assumed that she was going to go into academia. So imagine her family's surprise when she announced one day that she was moving to New York City to study theater. You see, like Ada, Anna had a head for numbers and a heart for art. And also like Ada, Anna didn't want to have to choose between the two. So she went out and found a profession that combined them both beautifully. She found work as a stage manager. The person who sits backstage with the headset on makes sure that everyone hits their marks. Stage manager is a perfect Ada profession. The stage manager lives and dies by that logical checklist of cues. And yet, in the heat of the performance, a good stage manager breathes with the play. They conduct the flow and the cadence of the action when the actors come on and off the stage, when the lights dim, when the curtain rises. Backstage with a checklist, breathing with the art. The stage manager is the unseen heart of the show, a poetical scientist. And with her background, Anna was a great stage manager. Backstage with a checklist, breathing with the art. Most of us in this room could be described that way in one way or another, right? And yet, like any other business, we have to keep our eyes on the data and on the numbers and on the logic. But don't just be a Babbage. Remember, we have these creative souls of a Byron. We have to remember to breathe with the work, not just to think it. Anna had her logical checklist, but she also breathed with the play. Ada understood the algebra behind Babbage's analytical engine, but then she compared it to flowers and to leaves and to...
How to unleash your inner Ada. The next time you're stuck, and I mean really stuck on a problem, rather than going straight down into the data, stop, bring your head back up, breathe with the problem.
Envision the craziest idea you can think of. Pull in other interested colleagues and brainstorm crazy ideas together.
Reward the craziest ideas. Leap over logic. Create unexpected associations.
And then return to the data. Refine your crazy idea with a dose of reality.
Weave algebra into flowers and then back into algebra again. That's the knack of poetical science.
Not just because it's fun, but because it's necessary.
The business of arts and culture needs your crazy ideas to thrive.
The business of arts and culture needs your crazy ideas made practical to survive.
And that's how you unleash your inner Ada.
Now, Ada actually was known for far more than just comparing algebra to flowers. She read Babbage's entire schematic for the analytical engine, and having done that, she wrote and created a complex algorithm that could be plugged in to that machine were it ever built. Historians tell us that this was the first computer program. Historians tell us that Ada Lovelace was the first computer programmer. That's right. Lord Byron's daughter, a poetical scientist, invented computer programming. Babbage envisioned the hardware. Lovelace envisioned the software. And as it happens, software is at the heart of our friend Anna's next chapter. Having lived in New York, having held the clipboard and breathed with the play, Anna returned to her beloved New Mexico and took a job that many of us in the cultural industry do when we're right out of school. She took a job in a box office. She took a job at the Santa Fe Opera. And when she got there, she learned that they were going to be implementing a new kind of software. That's right. She was unwittingly swept up into the origin story of one of the craziest ideas to ever come out of the business of arts and culture. The story of Tessitura.
Once upon a time, in New York City, the Metropolitan Opera was struggling to unify their customers with their financial information in one central system. What the Met needed was a technology to be the heartbeat of their organisation. They searched high and low, but that technology simply didn't exist. for the business of arts and culture. So a passionate team of arts administrators, Byrons, if you will, hired a team of computer programmers, or Babbages, to develop that technology. And at the helm of this massive project, they found the perfect persona to marry the operatic demands of the Met with the practical needs of the programmers. They found a stage manager, and his name was Chuck. Like Anna, Chuck had his clipboard and could keep the programmers in check, but he also knew how to breathe with the needs of the creatives. You see, like Ada and Anna, Chuck was a poetical scientist too. Now, Chuck's project was a huge success. The Met got their heartbeat, and the story might have ended there. But as word got out of this new thing that had been created, Chuck's inbox started to fill up. You see, Chuck and his team had created something that others in the business of arts and culture needed too. Now, the Met didn't know what to do. They needed to keep their focus on producing opera. But Chuck kept getting more and more emails. So they hired a creative businessman named Jack to help them develop a business plan for their creative technology. And Chuck and Jack gathered a group of people from various organisations who were all committed to using that technology. That was 2001, and just over a dozen people gathered around a conference table to work out what to do with Chuck's software. Think about who would have been in the room that day. These weren't technologists. These weren't capitalists. They were managers from opera companies, from performing arts centres, from a symphony orchestra. They were the practical administrators who spend their days breathing with the great art. They were poetical scientists, and they started throwing around some crazy ideas. They imagined a company that would have the best parts of a tech startup. It would be nimble, it would be innovative. But unlike a startup, it wouldn't have investors. It would be owned by the users. It would be a co-op. It would be a non-profit. It would literally have collaboration baked into its mission, and it would be solely devoted to the business of arts and culture. They didn't care that this hadn't been done before. They didn't care that others said it would fail. They didn't care that they would be entering a market with multi-billion-dollar competitors. It was a crazy idea, and this group of poetical scientists liked it that way. Now, that was the day the Tessitura network was formed, nearly 20 years ago. That small group of managers created the momentum that has built this community into over 650 organisations worldwide, including 52 here in Australia and New Zealand.
The origin story of the Tessitura network is a call to action still today. That inspiring group of poetical scientists had a crazy idea to solve a very practical problem in our industry.
What are the problems of the industry today, and what can we do together to help solve them?
If those few people could bring Tessitura to life, what could the tens of thousands of people who are part of the Tessitura community today do for our next act? I wish that I could have been there that day when the Tessitura network was founded. Jack and Chuck were there, of course. They were leading the meeting. Jack continues as our CEO, and Chuck continues as our head of technology. And there's one other person in the room today who was there that day. It was the beginning of her career. She was the youngest one in the room. She had been a stage manager and had found a job in a box office and had a head for numbers and a heart for art, and stumbled into becoming one of the first power users of Tessitura outside of the Met. Our friend Anna Wesley. And since that day, Tessitura has always been in her life. From the Santa Fe Opera, she went on to become employee number 8 at the Tessitura network. She became the first regional director here in Australia and New Zealand. She was the project manager for our whole development team. And she serves on our senior staff today as a vice president. And who knows what her future holds.
Because when you combine your inner Babbage with your inner Byron, there's no telling what you can do.
Now, as for Ada, you would think that inventing computer programming would have been her greatest contribution to the world. But it wasn't. Her greatest contribution to the world was that she saw the future.
You see, when Babbage designed the analytical engine, he believed he had designed a machine that could tabulate any combination of numbers and formulas quickly and accurately.
Ada saw that too, but then she saw something else. She had a crazy idea. She saw the future. In her own words,
the analytical engine might act upon other things besides number. Supposing, for instance, that the fundamental relations of pitched sounds in the science of harmony and of musical composition were susceptible to such expression and adaptations. The engine might compose elaborate and scientific pieces of music of any degree of complexity or extent.
in 1842, Charles Babbage envisioned a calculator.
In 1842, Ada Lovelace envisioned an iPhone, a computer that can write and play music. Ada envisioned a computer that could translate numbers into images or sounds or anything else that could be broken down into digits. Digits. She literally predicted the digital age. A 150-year leap of logic that required the disciplined mind of a Babbage and the wild spirit of a Byron. And in the 150 years since, Ada's intellectual descendants have built those computers and developed that digital technology that now resides in all of our pockets.
Sometimes poetical scientists can see the future, and sometimes poetical scientists can change the world. One more story about another stage manager. This is a story of a young man growing up in Soviet Czechoslovakia who got his very first job backstage at a theater in Prague in the 1950s. He had a head for logic and a heart for theater. And over time, he became a celebrated international playwright. Now, as Cold War tensions mounted, he parlayed his talent for words into a talent for politics. He became a leading dissident voice in the Velvet Revolution, the Czech people's movement to overturn the Soviets. It was a crazy idea, executed with practical precision. And ultimately, he became the first president of the Free Czech Republic and is remembered as a national hero. The airport in Prague is named for him, Václav Havel, a stage manager, a poet, a playwright, a national hero, a poetical scientist who had a crazy idea that his homeland could be free. Because you see, when you combine your inner Babbage with your inner Byron, there's no telling what you can do.
You might invent computer programming.
You might envision the digital age.
You might lead your country to freedom.
Poetical scientists are a rare, rare breed. But this industry is filled with them. We hear it when we visit your offices and your venues. We see it at wonderful events like this one. We experience it at our annual global Tessitura Learning and Community Conference, where nearly 2,000 Adas come together from all over the world to share logical ideas and to sing together, to make art, and to rock out. The poetical scientist potential of this community is staggering.
If Tessitura Network had a patron saint, it would be Ada Lovelace.
So ask yourself this: are you making the most of your rare, rare talent?
Are you unleashing your inner Ada?
Or are you stuck in a Babbage box doing the normal thing, the regular thing, the expected thing, without doing anything a little bit crazy?
Or are you the opposite, spinning around in a Byron blaze, coming up with all sorts of crazy ideas, none of them grounded in reality?
When we pull both together, we can realize the true potential of this industry.
When we all tap into our inner Ada, we can lift this industry up. We can start to imagine a world where we can bring more great art to more people, and we can solve our problems with crazy ideas practically executed.
And once we do that, we have one more crazy idea. We
believe
that this industry can help save the world. We believe that the business of arts and culture should be one that all of the other industries look to for inspiration. Imagine a world where people say, I wonder how Amazon is solving that problem, and I wonder how Google is solving that problem.
And I wonder how arts and culture is solving that problem. Imagine articles and books on innovation that point to the business of arts and culture for inspiration.
We believe this can happen, but only if all of us unleash our inner Ada. So to help remind you about that, let's summarize the 3 acts of poetical science.
1. Next time you have a problem, rather than going straight down into the data, stop and unleash those crazy ideas. Breathe with the problem, then go back to your checklist. If we each make an effort to do this, we can improve our work and our teams and lift our organisations to new heights.
2, as you're lifting your organization up, lift the whole industry up together, just like those poetical scientists did when they created the Tessitura network all those years ago.
And 3, when we harness this rare gift our industry has, filled with poetical scientists, filled with Adas, we can start to imagine a place where the business of arts and culture becomes a beacon for the world.
Imagine that world, and you're starting to think like Ada.
Because when you combine your inner Babbage with your inner Byron,
there's no telling what we can do.
Thank you.